Hello, ladies and gents. I'm sorry there. I had to say, oh yeah, I've got them. It's all right. Sorry there. It's just that, God, blimey, it's all this lighting. I can't get used to this lighting. I'm being honest. It's shocking because you see me the way I am. Anyway, I'm going to do the Gunpowder plot tonight. You know, bombing night yesterday, and don't forget it's not a football show. It's tomorrow. I'll be talking about Luton and their fans, their horrible inbred fans. I'll be talking about those horrible, horrible people. I just hope that they never get another point in the Premiership and go right down where they belong. They don't belong in the Premiership, those horrible people. Well, that's me rant. Wait till you hear me tomorrow. I'll be right up. Anyway, I'll be talking about the Gunpowder plot. Yes, the 1605 Gunpowder plot. And be intriguing, actually, because there are a lot of things that went wrong with the Gunpowder plot. Lots of things. Things that you might go, wow, I didn't know that. But honestly, just hear me out on this. And I've got my guest with me to help me along. That's the great Anthony Brown. Just want to go through these here. Mark Kinney, Stephen and Frank, hope you're doing okay. Looking forward to the Gunpowder plot. Will be a good one. Thank you, Mark. Thank you. Appreciate that. This is going to be interesting. I'm ready for my lesson, Frankie boy, says Redbeard D9. Okay. Frank's just checking he's took his happy pill. Says Redbeard. I wish I could. And he laughs and says, Mark Ennis laughs, Redbears, is that what the delay was? Tony Barn. Hello, Frankie. Hope you're keeping well, mate. Yes. Still eating those mince pies. As Redbeard says, Marky seems to have forgot where he's put it. Frank, you always do the Gunpowder plot better than the BBC. They get it wrong. You get it right. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate that. Really do. Hi, everyone. Hi, Frank, says Lee Wizkid. Hi, Lee. As I mentioned before, this is definitely not the Jazz Reynolds all the way up. All the way over from the States. Lives over in the States now. And Jazz says, Redbeard, bless you. Look at that. And all right, Frank, says Jazz. Thank you. I'm going to start on this now. Jazz, I'll be doing about all this Luton thing tomorrow. I'm gonna really have a go at those horrible fans, what they were chanting yesterday. Can't wait for them to come up here. Cannot wait for that Luton. Horrible people. Anyway, I'm going to bring on my friend, the international artist, Anthony Brown. And there he is. There he is. Hey, Anthony.
Evening, Frank. Evening, all. Actually, I'll tune in tomorrow. That sounds a good one.
Do you know what I'm gonna really have a go at Luton? I really am. I really am, because it's not Luton, it's the fans. Yeah. It's the fans, and they're just disgusting, despicable people. Having a clue. You know, mocking the dead, mocking us. Anyway, that's what I'll be on about.
We watched the match, but that didn't come across. So I look forward to to listening tomorrow.
Yeah. You
But
sure?
well,
Yeah. And Brian McMahon, hey Frank, let's have another fab show. The Gunpowder plot sounds great.
just
The Whiskers. Now then, Anthony, hope all's well, says Tony Barton.
thanks, Tony. All's
Okay,
good.
says evening, Anthony, as well, which is lovely. And Denny and Juice. Hello, Frank. Hope you're good. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Jenny. I haven't seen you for a short while. Glad you made it for the Gunpowder. This is what I'll be talking about. Anyway. And Redbird says, I haven't watched mainstream media for over 8 years because I didn't like the way it was going.
Yeah.
From what I hear, it's way worse now. I call the BBC a loads of bull broadcasting corporation. Yes.
Yep. I would go for that as well, Redbird. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not talking about the Beatles. Yeah, Mark Innes says, did you vote like the new Beatles song?
I loved it. Absolutely love it.
Yeah, I was listening to it last night. It was brilliant the way they did it, like, McCartney and Ringo. It's just...
Yeah.
Why are the fans like this, says Brian McMahon? Too much alcohol or natural infinity to be a loudmouth without morals? I'll go for your latter. Wouldn't you? Loudmouth without morals. That's what it says.
I'm very little brain.
Yeah. Right. Gunpowder plot, 1605. And what we have to look at, people, is this. We have to go back to the Reformation, Henry, when he divorced himself from Rome. And his advisors said, listen, why don't you become head of the Church of England? Have your own church and be head of that, because you won't have to rely then on Rome for whether, you'll be, if you want to get married again, you'll be able to get married as many times as you want, because you're the head of the church. You don't have to go to Rome. And he thought, oh, yeah, great idea, that. So he divorced himself. So it's what you call protesters. They protested against Rome. And that's what it's all about. This is what it's all about. You might think, that from the Reformation right up until 1605, you might think, well, how come? Because what you've got people now. When the Reformation started, they were rounding up Catholics. That's what it was. The purge of Catholic, the persecution was horrendous. It really was, and it went on for many, many years. If you didn't conform to the protesters' services, you could be heavily fined, sometimes put to death. You had the likes of pursuivants who went around to any estate where Catholics lived, went in and just robbed them blind, and no one could do anything about it. Nobody. They burnt the books, they burnt everything. What does that remind you of? You could go back in recent times for what these pursuivants did, government pursuivants, by the way. And they were terrorizing Catholic communities. That's what they were doing. Priests were actually smuggled in from France to say mass. So I'm going to jump a few hundred years here to 1830, and this is how bad it was. To 1830. It was the emancipation of Catholics then, from the 1500s, from the 1530s, right up to 1830. And that was like, they were oppressed, in other words. The Catholics were oppressed. and he was subjected to beatings, he was subjected to robberies, he was subjected to everything. He couldn't even be educated. He couldn't be educated. To be educated, you had to go to Protestant services, the protesters' services. That's where Protestant comes in. It's a elongated version of protest. That's all. That's what it is. Protest, Protestant. So you had to go to these particular services, and if you didn't go, you were heavily fined. Especially people who had children, they had to tell the children to go to these Protestant services, protester services, in order to be educated. And I'm talking about major families here. And also what was happening, these estates that were owned by Catholics, big mansion houses and whatever, all these servants and the ground workers, because they had people working on the ground. And if any of them were found working for a Catholic, they could have been imprisoned. So they had to leave the service. They had to leave the service of this Catholic household. And that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. So you've got to put yourself in the position of a Catholic who wants to go to a service. You even had the likes of the Norris family. And when you go down to Speak Hall, they had hiding places where priests used to hide so that they could serve.
Yeah.
So that they could listen to the services. And that's how bad it was. It really was bad. People were imprisoned, priests were executed on the spot. So what you had people complaining. You had people complaining. And these people who were complaining were from wealthy backgrounds. They were from very wealthy backgrounds. So you had the likes of the leaders. You had the nephew, Thomas Percy, he was the nephew of the Duke of Northumberland, a powerful man, very powerful man in the country. I'll give you more about him later. Not the Duke, but about Thomas Percy. Then you had the leader of the plotters, who was, when I say plotters, I mean plotters, okay? You had Thomas Catesby. Now, Catesby became leader of these people. And when you think about these leaders, you know, they were saying, listen, we've got to do something. We have to do something. We've got to do something. We've got a religion here.
Make a stand.
Yeah, make a stand. Let's have a point over them. Because there was no negotiations whatsoever. And as I said, you had all these particular pursuivants going around, beating up people, going into places, just as I said, robbing them blind. And if you were a household, if you owned a mansion or whatever, and the government goes in, you were heavily fined for not turning to being a reformist. Being a reformist. You were heavily fined. So by the time you were fined and getting fined, you had nothing left, so you had to sell your home. So you were selling your home to the advisors of Henry VIII. Because in those times, during those times, the more land you had, the more power you had. So the land that they were buying, the workers were already in place. Then they just brought in the servants, as long as they weren't Catholic. They converted to protesters, the reformers, This is what it was all about. This is what it was all about. During the period of Henry VIII, then all of a sudden, you had, when Elizabeth came onto the throne, you had it right through here, but you had three of the most powerful men who ran the country at the time. Three of them. One of them was Walsingham. Walsingham was a ruthless man. He was the most powerful man in the land at the time. Then, when he's demised, you had the Cecils, you had father and son. And the Cecils, they just controlled everything. They controlled everything in the country. And when Robert Cecil took over as dad after he passed on, Robert Cecil, he was the master spy. He was the master spy. The whole of the country, most powerful man. Now, let me take you back to Elizabeth I. Now, Elizabeth I, it was imperative when she married to have a heir. So she had to be married. She had to be married. Yet she didn't get married. And the big question mark is why? Why? Why didn't she marry to keep on the line of the protesters, the Protestant line, the Church of England line? And so they had a barrier. And that barrier was Mary, Queen of Scots, who was entitled to the throne, by the way. And she was Catholic.
Yeah.
So you've got to understand that these people who are in power now, they've seen this big barrier. Because if it would have reverted back to Catholicism, there would have been consequences for the protesters. Big consequences. Because Mary, Bloody Mary, as you know, Queen Mary, when she became queen, she had the nickname, didn't she, Bloody Mary?
Yeah.
Because Bloody Mary, she was putting people to death, apparently. But she was being advised. She was being advised by these people who were hypocrites. Let's give her a bad name. Okay, how do we give her a bad name? Let us sign death warrants for heretics, what we call heretics. Let us sign these. So therefore she became known as Bloody Mary. When she demised, she died at a young age. When she passed on, Elizabeth was thrown into the fore. There's a big theory about Elizabeth, believe you me, a massive theory. Now, don't forget, have this in your mind. She had to marry. She would have been forced to marry to carry on the line, to have an heir to the throne.
Yeah.
The Protestant heir. So now what you have Elizabeth going on. And then all the spin started to come out. The Virgin Queen. The Virgin Queen. So why was she called the Virgin Queen? Simply because she didn't marry. And the spin was only that she married the country. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
They spun it so, she married the country. And this is what it's all about, you see. She married the country. So what you have now is this sort of scenario where people were terrified. hiding the priests to have the services. Do you know Skirvin Street, Anthony?
Yeah.
Skirvin Street here in Liverpool. There was like little houses there. And did you know that one of the houses became, believe it or not, St. Anthony's Church? And they used to have it in the cellar of this house. And that's where priests used to go incognito to say services. Did you know that?
St. Anthony's is a place that's so close to our hearts.
Yeah, of course.
But no, I didn't know about the house.
Yeah, it scared it. That was the first St. Anthony's.
Wow.
I'll go on about that a bit later on, if you don't mind.
No. Wonderful.
Surprising, isn't it?
Wonderful.
It's surprising where St. Anthony's started off. And it was a cellar in Skirving Street.
We were able to have the twins christened there.
Yeah, well, if you look at it.
Bishop Tom. Yeah.
Well, yeah, Bishop, well, I know Bishop Tom. I gave a talk a couple of years ago. He was there. He said, "Why are you here late?" I said, "I was somewhere else. I forgot all about it." Anyway, I showed up. Bishop Tom. Great fella. But anyway, I'm going to leap a few hundred years, actually. I'll leap to when I mentioned about the Catholics being emancipated in 1830.
Yeah.
The Catholics up this end in Liverpool, they said, "Hey," they said to this Welby Pugin, they said, "Hey, can you get up here and build us a church?" And he went, "Yeah." So he came up, and he went to St. Oswald's.
Yeah.
Now, St. Oswald, he designed St. Oswald's, and don't forget now, the Catholics were emancipated. So he said, "How would you like a steeple, a big tall steeple?" And he went, "Yeah." He said, "All right." So he gave the steeple. St. Oswald's became the very first Catholic church in the north of England to have a steeple. Did you know that?
No, I didn't. But I would look forward to hearing that, and also to hearing you expand on the story, of course, of our Metropolitan Cathedral.
Yeah.
It should have been bigger and grander, but the
yeah, absolutely.
Time wouldn't allow it.
Well, you know about that, don't you? But when you look at the likes of St. Anthony's in Scotland Road today, you look at it. There's no steeple because they had to make them when they got the emancipation. They was making churches, Catholic churches, before the emancipation. The one which is I forget what you call it now. It's a club in town, and where is it? The Alma de Cuba. That was St. Peter's, and that was a little flat roof, like St. Anthony's. Hasn't got any steeples or big towers or anything. It's just more or less a flat roof, and that's the way the churches have to be. But going back to the 1600s, to the 1500s, the 16th century. But you had, as I said, you had all this emancipation, going on, all these pursuivants running around and, kicking the hell out of the Catholics up and down the country. It wasn't just here, it was everywhere. It was shocking, Anyway, by the time these people got together, it was coming to the end of Elizabeth's reign. It was coming to the end. Now, you know that Elizabeth had many pursuers. Many pursuers she had.
Yeah.
And one of them was the Earl of Essex. And the Earl of Essex was always saying, "Hey, listen, do you fancy getting married or what?" And she was saying, "Oh, behave yourself. I'm married to the country." But he just wanted power.
Yeah.
And no matter if you see a portrait, everybody's seen a portrait of Elizabeth I. Everybody. everybody has seen a portrait of Elizabeth I. I'm going to say this, Anthony. Do you know that every artist throughout the land who was doing these portraits had to make her look feminine? They had to make her look feminine.
I knew it was almost an unspoken thing that if they were regarded as ugly,
Yeah,
or plain, then it was the artist's responsibility to make them look different.
make them look good, yeah. Make them really look good.
But one of the
Because
greatest artists, Hans Holbein, kind of he just went for it. I'll paint you as you are, as you look. And there was some backlash towards that, and there was some. So his is, of course, we didn't have the benefit of cameras and photos then, so you couldn't check. And fashion played a part as well, because you
very much so.
were regarded as ugly if you looked different. If you came from Spain or you came from somewhere else and you dressed differently, then automatically you were regarded as not as handsome or beautiful.
Okay. Well, you've got to look at Elizabeth. She was 6'1", while the average height of a lady in those days was 4'10" to 4'11".
Yeah.
She was 6'1". She was very hirsute. She had no breasts. That's why you'd always seen her in a ruffle. You know, these ruffles that went around. And also, she had big hands and big feet. She also had male pattern baldness.
Well,
and she also shaved every day. So I'll be going back to that. So I'll just carry on now. So you had the likes of the Earl of Essex saying, do you fancy getting married? Because always the Earl of Essex, the Earl of Essex was 13th in line to the throne. Not many people know that, but he was 13th in line to the throne. And when she said, "Oh, behave yourself," you know, so she wouldn't marry. And he was pursuing her for years until one day he found out something. So Robert Cecil went to the Queen and said, "Send him over to Ireland. Get him over to Ireland. Get them over there to Ireland. Get them over there with his men." So they went to Ireland. And one day, the Earl of Essex said, this is in 1600. "What am I doing here? What am I doing in Ireland? Why have I got to go to the Irish and put them to the sword? What? Why? So he decided to have a bloodless coup. And I'll tell you for why a bit later on. A bloodless coup. Bloodless coup. So you had these plotters, so-called plotters, and they was wanting the emancipation. And Lord Derby was involved. Did you know that?
No.
Well, Lord Derby was involved. Anyway, a fellow by the name of John Winter from York, came to Liverpool and he said, "Listen, my lord, will you help me to get to Spain? I really need to get to Spain to talk to King Francis and let them, do something for us. we need some sort of leeway. We need to be practicing our faith.
Some hope, yeah.
So can you help us? He said, there's nothing I can do. Just go to Francis and see what he can do. Just go over to him. And he set sail from Liverpool. Now, there was a few plotters, by the way. There was a few plotters. He had a brother. Well, he had two other brothers to John Winter. So he set sail to Spain. And he said, can you help us? He said, there's nothing we can do. There's nothing at all unless we went to war with them, the English. He said, we can't do anything. So we said, okay, all right. So we sailed back, went back to York. So now Robert Catesby, did I say Thomas Catesby before? Robert Catesby, he was the leader. He became the leader because who was the original leader was Thomas Percy. Thomas Percy was the original leader of the plotters because he was the nephew of the Duke of Northumberland. But he was a weak man of sorts because when Elizabeth died in 1603, don't forget, you had the barrier, didn't you, with Elizabeth, with Mary, Queen of Scots. Now, Elizabeth had her executed for treacherous behaviour and coups and everything else, which was a load of nonsense. Because there was letters written saying, she's, she wants to take over the throne, she's going to have a coup with you, and whatever. So anyway, she was brought up for treason and duly executed based on lies. So she was out the way now, but she had a son, and her son was named James. Now he was King of Scotland. Now he was the James VI of Scotland. James VI of Scotland. Think about that. Mary, Queen of Scots' son. So when Elizabeth died, who did he turn to? He turned to James. Yeah. James VI of Scotland. And they knew by then, Robert Cecil knew by then that he renounced his faith. Because he only wanted power, James I. He became James I. He only wanted power. And he actually went to Elizabeth and congratulated her for the execution of his own mother. Think about that. His own mother. He went to her and said, yeah, well done. Oh, great that. Queenie, great that. Thanks. For his own mother. So that's what kind of a fella he was. He just wanted the power.
We've got a few of them now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not in royalty, but certainly in politics.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I'll tell you something now, by the way. I'll tell you something now. Do you know every time the Queen used to sign all these documents, whatever, and now Charles does it, every time he signs, do you know that it has to be countersigned by the Duke of Norfolk? Because the line goes from Henry VII and it goes straight through to the Duke of Norfolk. In other words, they're the rightful owners to the throne today. They're the rightful owners to the throne today. But getting back to these plotters, and what you've got now is these lads congregating. These lads are congregating and talking. We've got to do something. We have to do something. Because when Winter came back from Spain, he said, we can't do anything. So he said, all right, let's have a look. Now, do you know anything about Guy Fawkes, by the way? Anything at all?
Only the kind of statue that's set up on the syllabus, and the whole enemy of establishment kind of story, but not much about his life. I was chuffed many years ago to walk into a hotel in York and see a plaque on the wall to say, Guy Fawkes used to come here. And I thought, I'll raise a glass to him.
Yeah.
And
The thing is, no one knew anything about him. I'll mention one name, and it'll remind you of how it happened to him. Okay,
Yeah.
Lee Harvey Oswald.
Right. Yeah.
Lee Harvey Oswald. Okay, just bear that in mind.
Yeah.
With Guy Fawkes. So Guido Fawkes, Guy. He went to the grammar school in York. He was great mates with the Winter brothers, and also the Wright brothers. It was Thomas and Christopher Wright.
Yeah.
He was great. He was at grammar school with them. But he was a soldier of fortune, was Guy Fawkes. So I'll have to give you a little bit of background about him.
Yeah.
So we went over. He was actually over in France. And the French were at war with the Dutch.
Yeah.
They were at war with him. And you'll understand why it became imperative about Guy Fawkes. Okay.
Yeah.
And there it is. He was fighting with the French. He was fighting with the French. And they were surrounded, but not surrounded. The French were by the seaside, and there's the channel behind them, while the Dutch were in front of them. Right? They were in front of them.
Yeah.
So anyway, you've heard of the old saying, haven't you? The war was won and lost in a day. You've heard of that, haven't you?
Yeah.
Won and lost in a day. The battles were won and lost in a day. The wars were won and lost in a day. And this is what it is. This is what it was. Guy Fawkes, now he was fighting alongside the French. And he went, I've got a plan. Because what has happened, when it went dark, I know this sounds daft, but when it went dark, they used to go, all right, so see you tomorrow, and carry on. They go, yeah, all right, see you tomorrow. When it gets lazy. So it went all dark. So Guy Fawkes said, listen, lads, I've got a plan. What I'll do, he said, I'll dig down and burrow right under them and come behind them. And he went, oh, behave yourself. He said, no, we'll do it. We'll do it. We can do it. Now, don't forget, this is sand. This is sand. So they dug down. And they went along. They never done it in a night. So they just carried on battling, in the day. Then when the night went, everyone stopped. Whatever. And then they went, anyway, they finally got behind them. So the Dutch, the next morning went, we're going to have you now. And he went, you're not. This is the French, you're not. Because Guy Fawkes there was behind him with a load of French soldiers. So now the Dutch were surrounded. They had the French behind them, and they had the French in front of them.
Yeah.
And that was it. It was all over. The French beat the Dutch.
Dio wave a white flag.
Hey?
Dio waves the white flag.
Yeah, that was it. Do you know what it was like? Very much so. It was very much like Waterloo. Now, Waterloo, no, sorry, the Duke of Wellington, the Iron Duke. He went like that. We're going to pack up in 15 minutes. They were going to surrender in 15 minutes' time. That's what it was like then at the Battle of Waterloo.
Yeah.
1815. So 15 minutes. But you know what had happened? The French, they just were looking right at the British and they had them gone. They had them surrounded. And they were saying, you can either die or just surrender. And that's when the Iron Duke said, 15 minutes, I'm going to surrender. And what had happened was there was the big Prussian leader who was fighting alongside the British, Prussian leader named Blucher. And Blucher was lost. He was actually lost. And he said to one of his lads, where's that gunfire coming from? He said, over there. So they marched towards where the gunfire was coming from. And the gunfire became right behind the French. They came right behind the French. So now the French were surrounded because they had the British in front of them and the Prussians the back of them. Just like the French and the Dutch. And the Dutch were caught in the middle, just like the French were caught in the middle.
History repeats itself.
History repeats itself.
Remarkably successfully sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. So you had this at Guy Fawkes. So now they were talking, they were all having a conflab and whatever. And they said, can we bring in a fella? And he said, he had a great swordsman. He's a marvellous swordsman. And he can dig tunnels if he needs a tunnel dug, right?
Yeah.
And he said, well, what's his name? He said, Guido Fawkes. We used to go to school. He was a cracking fella. And, and all this. Can you imagine them saying, oh, he's a cracking fella, yeah? Get him over. So anyway, he joined the plotters. But he was only a little, he was a nothing. He wasn't a leader. He wasn't anything. He just took orders or whatever, right? He was a nothing man. He was a nothing man, in other words. But he was just, sorry.
Did he not volunteer his experiences, his ideas?
Oh, was that? Yeah, well, this is it. They said, well, it'd be great if we could, where can we take a tunnel? Now, I'm going to come back to a tunnel, if I might.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to come back to that. Because it's good. It's good.
Yeah.
But implausible, if I might say as well. Good, but implausible, if you know what I mean. So you've got the juxtaposition between, what a great idea and a bad idea, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Now, one thing you've got to think of as well, Anthony, is this. The Earl of Essex. Now, the Earl of Essex said to these fellas, he got wind about, which I'll explain a bit later on. So he got wind of something about the Queen. Elizabeth I. So he went, oh, is that right? Yeah. Okay. Let's get over there and we'll sort this out. Sod Islands, I don't know what I'm doing here. So let's get over there and sort out Cecil and the rest of them and the Queen. Now then, what Cecil had was a spy.
Yeah.
He had a spy. He was a Catholic, by the way. Now, Cecil hated Catholics, yet he had a spy who was a Catholic. and his name was Lord Monteagle. He was a Lord Monteagle. So we went, get Monteagle in. So he said, listen, he said, I want you to go around, you know, and because he was a cousin to, or an in-law, he was an in-law to Sir Francis Tresham, one of the plotters, one of the so-called plotters. And I'll go on about him later on as well. Because it's intriguing, this. It really is. So he's just talking to their Tresham. By the way, now Tresham didn't know that Lord Monteagle was a spy, by the way. He didn't know he was a spy. So he said, is there anything going on with, you know, your mates? And he went, well, they want to make a mark. They want to make some sort of statement about what they're going through. They want the emancipation of every Catholic in the country. They want the emancipation of all priests. They want to carry on with their services. So we're going to make a demonstration. We're going to make a demonstration. So we went there, oh, that sounds interesting. That sounds interesting, he said. So anyway, what had happened was, he went right back to Cecil and said, they're going to make a demonstration. He said, find out what it is. Find out what it is, what this demonstration is. Now, what you've got to understand also is this. First and foremost, every Catholic, you know, if you were a gentleman, could not have a sword or a dagger, no weapons, right? No weapons whatsoever. You couldn't have a weapon. Also, all these Catholics, main Catholics, had to stay within a radius of 5 miles. If they went over that 5 miles, they could be put to death. Yet, if you think about it, you're at the likes of John Winter travelling all the way from York to Liverpool. But not only that, but he was also going down to London. He was going all over the place. But so were the others. Okay. Now, I've got to take a couple of tabs now. It's 9 o'clock. I wonder if Jason is, I wonder if he's listening in. So we can put a thing on, a clip.
Okay.
Like if he has got a clip. If you don't mind, Anthony.
Not at all, Sir Frank.
Okay, let me just, because Jason, I don't know whether he's listening in. Wow, great. He's great. You love him, you know. Right. Just mention Willie. Anyway, he's got a clip, and he's going to show it, and I'll see it in about whenever 10 minutes or something. Okay, to 5 minutes.
I'm going nowhere.
Thanks a lot. I won't be long, people. I will be back to finish off this thing. Unpleasant is one of the most unassuming thoroughfares of Liverpool, yet it has a very interesting past. For example,
there is a very small garden dedicated to one of Liverpool's greatest citizens, William Roscoe, who was born right here in Mount Pleasant in an inn run by his parents. Roscoe Gardens. Lots and lots of people just walk past it every single day and don't take a blind bit of notice. But follow me, I'll take you in. The man who brought the country's first botanical gardens to Liverpool in 1801. However, this humanitarian's greatest achievement was when he led a group of Liverpool abolitionists who campaigned tirelessly against the slave trade. Roscoe's abolitionists finally won the fight when it was abolished in 1807. Incidentally, the designer of this wonderful memorial was also a Liverpool great, the town surveyor and architect John Foster Jr. And incidentally, he also lived on Mount Pleasant. So if you want to see his house, follow me. This is where he lived. Foster was responsible for designing the likes of St Luke's Church, locally known as the Bombed Out Church, the Grades 1 listed oratory next to the Anglican Cathedral, and of course St Andrew's in Rodney Street, with now the famous Mackenzie's Pyramid Tomb. I've just remembered what I've passed walking up Mount Pleasant. You can't miss out on this. Come on. This is what I forgot to tell you. This wonderful dwelling is the oldest Georgian building in Liverpool, built in 1767. It's just a magnificent example of Georgian architecture at its best. Right next door, when John Lennon was born, just up the road in Oxford Street, he was registered here like so many of Liverpool's other citizens were, famous or not so famous. You most probably were registered here yourselves. And next door again, remember this building? This was Liverpool's own dolls' hospital. Yeah, Liverpool has its own hospital for the sick dolls, a unique institution indeed. And people did actually bring their broken dolls here. You could have been one of them, bringing your poorly sick doll. Ah, bless. This striking building is the Wellington Rooms. It was adopted by the Irish community, and later it became affectionately known as the Irish Centre for many, many years. It was built in 1816 in honour of the Iron Duke himself, Wellington, for his greatest victory in battle at Waterloo over his greatest adversary, Napoleon, the year previous in 1815. I'd love to take you in, but unfortunately, and it breaks my heart this, it's fell into disrepair in the inside. The whole of the ceiling has collapsed.
About that then. I have plenty. When I graduated a few times, I
Oh,
went
fascinating.
in there, celebrated. It was great. The Irish Centre.
I love that. The last time I went to the Irish Centre was about 1996.
Yeah.
And then shortly after but I know over the years there's been so much love and want to to restore it, bring it back, and it seems to be a battle with the council, a battle with someone else. It seems to be a conflicting situation for many years. I really, really would like to see it open again.
Yeah, I think everyone would. But as I said in the video there, the ceiling's just collapsed.
Fallen, yeah,
It's just
yeah.
collapsed.
The problem with everything, even stone. But
Yeah.
the fascination as well with me with the story you were telling then about the whole origins of William Roscoe and if anyone was a giant amongst men, he was in Liverpool. Came from a fairly humble background and kind of went back to the same, didn't he?
Yes, he certainly did. Yeah, yeah. But you know, it's
But,
one of those things that we have fond memories. But as you said, a fella named Atkins, he designed it, and it was built in 1816. It took a year to build after his victory,
and
and it
see,
was called the Wellington Rooms. It was shocking the way it's shocking the way 1816.
yeah,
It's over like 200 years old, and it's just left to rack and ruin.
yeah.
And as I said, you know, when I graduated a few times, I went in there to celebrate, and it was great. It was really, in fact, Jerry Gardens, where I grew up, they had a big reunion there. There was
Yeah,
a massive reunion in the early 90s. You know, it was great. It was really good, you know, with all the people, and, you know, you hadn't seen in years, they all showed up. My mother was there, my aunties were there. You know, it was really lovely, and you know, it's
fantastic.
the memories. Yeah, it is. It is. Oh,
And to you, St. Luke's, I've drawn that a few times over the years, and even as it stands, so-called bomb church,
yeah,
it's so ornate and extraordinary. It
it
just,
is. And you know, when you look at the windows, there is still pieces of stained glass in them. There's still pieces of it, and it was hit by a bomb, a proper bomb.
yeah,
And yet it still stood. And yet he designed the custom house that was on Shivas Park, as we know today. Shivas Park. And an
yeah.
incendiary at that. And it's only gutted 2/3 of it inside. And they pulled it down.
I
That
know,
was,
it's
it was
crazy.
bigger than St. George's Hall, same stone as well. Could you imagine that facing the Albert Dock
Just
today?
absolutely, it's like a palace.
Oh, it's incredible. It is. It's like
Yeah,
an Italiano palazzo. It
yeah.
really, well, it was.
And what a view again from off the boats or from
Yes,
off
yes,
the airplanes coming into Liverpool.
yes.
What a stately comment that would be. Yeah,
I'm right in front of it. I've got a cracking picture. I think I showed it a few weeks ago
yeah.
of the overhead railway as well. The overhead railway, right facing it, and there's a photograph, a certain photograph, and you see the custom house in the background, and in the foreground you've got the overhead railway, which is absolutely fantastic. Both of them, both of them. But anyway, I'm going to carry on with this, if I might.
I'm all ears and all attention, Frank. I'm with you.
Funny enough, Brian McMahon says, Frank, did the Earl of Essex betray Queen Elizabeth? I'll be telling you about that now. In a way, he did, because he went over in order to have a coup, a bloodless coup. He was going to take over the throne.
Yeah.
He was going to get rid of her. And unfortunately, Lord Monteagle, he said, here, he's going to have a bloodless coup. So he went, oh, is he now? All right. So they waited for him. And they got him. And they arrested him. And they put him in the Tower. And he was executed. The Earl of Essex. And I'll tell you for why he wanted this. He was going to expose the Queen and Cecil. We'll explain that at the end. Right. Now, who was with him? Were certain Catholics. And Cecil said, I want them. Couldn't prove anything, you see, so I want these fellas. Now, what you've got to take into consideration also, Andy, is this. These are Shakespearean times. And if you mention the devil or anyone else, the likes of Dr. Faustus, if you know what I mean, right? Christopher Marlowe, he had written a play, Marlowe.
Yeah.
And they wanted him out the way. They wanted Marlowe out the way. This is the government. So do you know what they did? In 1594, they got one of the agents to go into a pub, because they used to drink, you know, all these like arty people went and they used to have a drink in these inns and pubs and things. So he was in there with friends, and he was this agent, government agent. And he was sitting there and he was listening, and he picked a fight with Christopher Marlowe and stabbed him to death. He was arrested and he was fined a shilling, the equivalent of a shilling, and let go, because he was an agent under the orders of the government to get rid of this Christopher Marlowe. So you've got to look at the way it was in Shakespearean times, because anything involved with a wood where light never penetrated is deemed evil. Is deemed evil. You can even go back a few hundred years to Arthur Miller's The Crucible, the play The Crucible, which means melting pot, a melting pot. And in the play, you have a little black girl. She's a slave, and she's dancing, or they said she was dancing in the wood. So they must have deemed her as a witch.
Yeah.
And that was based on the Salem witch hunt of 1692.
Yeah.
It was a true story. Okay. So let's go back to here now. So you've got Shakespeare now. You've got Shakespeare. And he even wrote about, you know, the evilness of a wood where light never penetrates. So it must be evil. And that's the way it was in Shakespearean times, a wood. So you've got a place now, a place called Holbeach. And Lord Monteagle said, listen, there's a few of those lads who are met up and they meet up in a place called Holbeach in Staffordshire. So he said, what's there? He said, well, there's nothing there really. It's just this house. And they meet up there. It's in the middle of a wood. So no one can see them or anything. They can come in and out and whatever. without being seen. And Cecil was made up. He said, it's in the wood. He said, yeah. It's in a wood. He said, great, evil. A coven. It's a witch's coven. And that was it. That was the spin. Okay. So they've got them now. They've got the evilness, witch's coven, everything going for the government. And he said, listen, he said, I want you to find out what this plan is that they've got, the statement they want to make. Now, when I said before that the Catholics couldn't even own a sword or a dagger or any sort of weapon, a couple of them went to France. And what they bought there was the most valuable commodity at the time. And that was gunpowder. That was gunpowder. And the only thing they got was a little sack of it. A little sack. A little sack of it. And they brought it up to Hull Beach. And it was damp. It wasn't any good, so they said, we'll have to dry it out. So they put us on a table. Now, here's what happened. Lord Monteagle, he got wind of it. He said, they've got some gunpowder. He said, how much? He said, oh, there's only a smidgen. He said, what they want to do, they want to make a bang outside Parliament to say, hey, we're still here. We're still here. Us Catholics are still here. And that was the demonstration that they were going to make. Cecil rubbed his hands wickedly. He went, whoa, this is brilliant, this. Can't get over this. Hull Beach, in the middle of a wood. Gunpowder. Gunpowder. That'll do me. Now, here's where the propaganda comes out. I don't know whether you're aware of this, but Joseph Goebbels said that the English were the greatest propagandists in the world. And he took a leaf out of their book, the propaganda book.
I wasn't aware of that remark, but I can certainly see that.
Oh yeah. He said this is brilliant. This
today it still goes on.
If you tell a lie and keep repeating it, people will believe it. Never forget that. Right?
Yeah.
Never forget that. Anyway, that came from Goebbels himself. If you tell a lie and lie and lie and lie, the same lie, people will believe it. So anyway, what had happened was it gets back to Cecil. So he was rubbing his hands. So he said, I've got to make this concrete. Because these lads, as I said, a few of them were with the other fella, the Earl of Essex. But he needed these out the way because the Earl of Essex knew something about the Queen.
Yeah.
About the Queen. I'm just wondering if I've got this paper. Really haven't. Let's see if we have. No. I've got it somewhere. Just bear with me. can't find the bloody thing. Can't find it. But I will. I'll show it next week when this will all be over. But I'll show something. I've got it somewhere, but I'll get it. And it's fascinating what I'm going to say a little bit later on. So anyway, he went, okay, let's round them up. Let's round these fellas up once and for all. He said, but we need proof that they're going to do something. We need it. So now, how they were rounded up was based on a letter. A letter. I had to write it out today, like this letter. And this is word for word. Don't forget it's in Old English as well. Now, what had happened was, Robert Cecil went to the Privy Council and he said, listen, I want everyone here tonight. And they said, what for? He said, get here tonight. Don't be asking questions. Just get here tonight. I want every one of you here. Because only a few of them went now and again. These privy councillors. They just gathered now and again, just a few of them. But he said, I want a lot of you in tonight and stay here until I appear. So he went, okay. All right, we'll do that. Because they were terrified of him. Yeah. So they were all there. Now, Lord Monteagle, he gets home and it's raining. So he gets off his horse, goes in, and a manservant said, I'll put the horse away. He said, no, you won't, leave it. He said, it's raining, leave it. And he went, oh, okay. He said, I'm going to bed. He said, are you going to bed, my lord? He said, no, sitting up. He said, but it's dark. He said, I'm not going to bed, and you're not going to bed either, because you went to bed early, because it was always dark. It was always dark. So people went to bed early. Because don't forget, this is November. This is November. So anyway, he had to stay up, this fella, and it was very unusual. Now, where's the unusual things? He turns around. Cecil, he turned around to the Privy Council and said, I want you here tonight. I don't want you to move. I don't want you to go home. Stay here until I appear. So he said, all right. So anyway, he knew what time he was getting to the Privy Council that evening.
Yeah.
But also, why did Lord Monteagle say, don't unsaddle me horse, even though it was raining? And why did he tell his servant to stay up instead of going to bed, and himself going to bed? So there was something brewing. There was something going on.
They'd had their plan.
Exactly. So the next, they're just sitting there, or I don't know what the valet was doing, but anyway, there was a knock on the door. And Cecil said, you better get that, hadn't you? So anyway, he went out to the front door, wherever it was, opened it, and there was a fella there, still raining. And he said, there's a letter for Lord Monteagle. So this letter was given to Lord Monteagle. Now, one thing that you do not do, these gentlemen, these lords or whatever, was to have if it was a letter, sealed, waxed, given to him, and Lord Monteagle said, "Oh, read it." And he was shocked. The servant was shocked. He said, "Well, are you sure you want me to read this?" He said, "Yeah, read it out to me." He said, "Oh, okay. Where's the letter?" Now, don't forget, his horse is still saddled. Monteagle's horse. And there's the letter. And I'll dissect this, not as I'm reading it, but I will go back to it. Okay.
Yeah.
And it says, "My Lord, out of the love I bear to some of your friends, I have care of your preservation. Therefore, I would advise you, as you tender your life, to devise some excuse to shift of your attendance at this Parliament. For God and man hath concurred to punish the wickedness of this time, and think not slightly of this advertisement, but retire yourself to your country, where you may expect the event in safety. For though there is no appearance of any stir yet, I say they shall receive a terrible blow, this Parliament, and yet they shall not see who hurts them. This council is not to be condemned, because it may do you good and can do you no harm, for the danger is past as soon as you have burned the letter. And I hope God will give you the grace to make good use of it, to whose holy protection I command you." That's what the letter said. Okay.
Yeah.
Lord Monteagle said, "Oh, give me that." So he gave him it. He said, "I'll be back later." So he jumps on his horse and he rides down straight to the Privy Council, where Robert Cecil is addressing the Privy Council, all of them. Right? That's strange, that, isn't it, really? And he reads it out. He said, "My Lord, look at what I've received." Neil, what is it? He said, "It's a letter. Look at it." Now I'm going to read it again. And he read this out too. Now, you've got to ask yourself, well, why did Lord Monteagle ask his servant to read out the letter to him? You see? Now he's gone down, presented it to Robert Cecil. And Robert Cecil opens it and starts reading it. And this is what he read out to them. "My lords, out of the love I bear to some of your friends, I have care of your preservation. Therefore, I would advise you, as you tender your life, to devise some excuse to shift your attendance at this Parliament. For God and man hath concurred to punish the wickedness of this time, and think not slightly of this advertisement, but retire yourself to your country, where you may expect the events in safety. For though there be no appearance of any stir yet, I say they shall receive a terrible blow, this Parliament, and yet they shall not see who hurts them. This council is not to be condemned, because it may do you good and can do you no harm, for the danger is past as soon as you have burnt the letter. And I hope God will give you the grace to make good use of it, to whose holy protection I commend you." Now, that's being read out. What doesn't it mention? Have you any idea? What doesn't that mention?
It doesn't mention an individual body or people that will cause a threat.
Yeah. Also, it doesn't mention a date.
Yeah.
It doesn't mention gunpowder. It doesn't mention gunpowder, does it?
No.
Which is very important. Now, if I was writing to you and I said, Anthony, whatever you do, don't go down the post office. There's going to be an explosion there, mate. There's going to be a bomb. Don't go there.
Yeah.
I've got word that there's going to be a bomb.
Yeah.
Now, that's straightforward, isn't it?
Yeah.
But what's not mentioned here? And I'd say, Anthony, don't go on Friday night. I know you and Laney go there. Don't go on Friday night because there's going to be a bomb. It's going to blow up. Right? That's what I'd say. That's what a letter would say to warn you. Right? This letter doesn't mention gunpowder. It doesn't mention a date. It doesn't mention anything. The only thing that it mentions is a terrible blow, this Parliament. A terrible blow. That could mean anything.
Yeah.
It could mean anything. Anything at all. Now then, let's look at the Parliament. The Parliament is the most fortified building in the whole of the country. Fortified. Therefore, the fortification has arms. And to have them arms, like muskets and pistols, you have to have gunpowder.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, this is what it does. The most fortified building. Now, here's the spin. Here's the spin of this. The letter, as I said, doesn't mention those vital ingredients. And it also hasn't got a name attached to it. It hasn't got a name attached to it at all. Nothing. Absolutely zilch. Right? Yet, Cecil conjured up, whoa, this is going to be, I'll explain about that just a little bit later. So, the Privy Council, what are we going to do then? So how do they know? How does anybody know about Parliament? A terrible blow. When is this terrible blow going to happen? Do you see what I mean? There's no date. There's nothing.
And when you invite the full packed house audience to listen to this.
Yeah, exactly. So, they're all sitting there going, well, what's this? What's to do with, we don't know anything. Well, what is it anyway? So this is what you have. This is the scenario. Then you have the spin. And the spin are these lads here. Robert Winter, cousin of Robert Catesby. Christopher Wright, friends of Robert Catesby. John Wright, friends of Robert Catesby. Guy Fawkes, gunpowder expert. Now, don't forget what I mentioned about him. He mentioned about Guy Fawkes, that is, about digging a tunnel, going through and, coming behind the Dutch.
Yeah.
So that's why they brought him in. So they had to devise another plan for him to be involved. And that is, I'm talking about Cecil here. I'm talking about Cecil. And what the plan was, that they were all going to meet in an inn get onto this. This is nuts, this. They were going to dig a hole in one of the rooms through the inn, right down, and dig a tunnel right underneath the Houses of Parliament to bring in gunpowder.
Which is a legend of what he did in warfare with the French,
Yeah.
the Dutch.
Yeah. It's absolutely ridiculous. It was impossible. It was implausible, but impossible to take a tunnel from an inn. You're going through concrete and everything. You know what I mean? It's ridiculous. No pneumatic drills then, no then. And you got to do it within a couple of days. Right? So that was the spin. So they went, oh yeah, that's what they were going to do. And more spin came about. There's the basement of Parliament, and there's all the little barrels of gunpowder. Do you know how many barrels supposedly there? 36 barrels, which was the equivalent of 2 tons of gunpowder.
No way.
2 tons. So,
therefore, there's already there for the troopers and the
exactly, it was already there.
It's there.
Because if you take it logically, you know, these are going to smuggle in 36 barrels. You had guards everywhere, all over the place. You had guards down by the cellars, by the doors to get into the cellars. So you had guards there. You had guards there.
Yeah. Oh, God.
So how are they going to get in? And this is one of them. They went by boat to get into the Parliament to plant the bombs, the gunpowder. Yeah. And this is the greatest image of all. And it's Guy Fawkes. Don't forget, he was the gunpowder expert. Right? He was the gunpowder expert. So you're at him. And he's there. Look at all the barrels. Yeah. Now, don't forget, they've already supposedly have got these in. So how have they got them in? How have they got them in? You know, they couldn't walk through Parliament and soldier, hey, where do you go? What's that? Oh, a big barrel of gunpowder. Maybe we've got another 35 to bring in. What are you going to do with it? Are we going to blow up Parliament, the King and everybody else? Just see how pathetic it is.
Just to power the propaganda.
Oh, fantastic. Absolutely fantastic propaganda. So now you've got Guy Fawkes. That's the image. I always ask people when I give lectures, what's the image of Guy Fawkes that you have? And they all, you know, a few of them say he's holding a torch and a lamp and he's ready to set fire, you know, the spark to blow up Parliament. Right? So that's the image you've got. Yeah. Also, what you can't, which you should remember, that Guy Fawkes was not only was he a marksman, but also, you know, a gunpowder there. But he was a great swordsman. He was a fantastic swordsman. Right?
He was a soldier.
He was a soldier, of course, yeah. Now, he was a great swordsman. And he was caught by 2 beefeaters. They supposedly have gone down and seen him. Hey, what are you doing there? Oh, it's all right. I'm going to set going to blow up Parliament. How are you? You're under arrest. Oh, okay then. He would have taken them out. He would have taken the beef eaters out. Pathetic. Pathetic. So now, that's the image you've got of him.
Yeah.
That's the big image. And there he is being arrested. All of a sudden, the beef eaters have called all of the soldiers and they all grab him. And he never even drawn a sword. Didn't even draw a sword. There the images, being arrested. Being arrested.
So the first thing that comes to mind was he ever there?
Okay, brilliant, thank you. That's a good one. Yeah, I'll be going to that. And there he is, look, he's, there's Cecil there and they're talking and the king's there. And he's saying, yeah, I was going to kill you. Oh, yeah, all right then. You're going on trial, mate. You're going on trial. So, let's have a look at the trial. Let's have a look at the trial. Robert Cecil took confessions. Yeah. No one else was allowed to take any confessions. There was only one scribe allowed, and that was Robert Cecil himself. And we know today that Robert Cecil and the confessions are bogus. They weren't true confessions. They weren't true confessions. They were made up by the only scribe allowed there, and that was Robert Cecil himself. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Now then. With no how can I put this? With no scribes taking confessions on only him, and we know that they're bogus anyway. It's been proved that they were bogus, phony. He just made them up himself. You've got to look at the trial itself. You have to look at the trial itself. And the trial was this. What you read of that transcript, you're reading Robert Cecil and his interpretation, because there was no other scribes there. Not one scribe was there. Not one scribe. I'll go back to this. There wasn't one scribe there. Robert Cecil was the only scribe. The only scribe taking, writing about this. Whereas you've got, one of the plotters, he was on trial there, and the prosecution was saying, you tried to kill the king, didn't you? Yes, my lords, I tried to injure the king, and I am sorry. May God have mercy. I hope God forgives me. This is what he's saying. I meant to injure the king and the good people of Parliament. This is what they're saying in the witness box. This is his interpretation. This is the interpretation of the only scribe who was writing it, and that was Robert Cecil. Okay?
Yeah.
But there was one man there at the trial. One man who has a fantastic memory. We call it photographic memories today. And have a guess who that was?
Well, it would be unbelievable if it was Guy Fawkes.
No, Well, he's on the trial. He's one of the witnesses, isn't he? Not witnesses. He's one of the victims. He's one of the defendants who's saying, "Listen, I never heard." Do you know how Guy Fawkes was arrested? By the way, he wasn't arrested, which you were right. He wasn't even there. He was arrested 3 days later. 3 days later, Anthony, in a pub. He was having a bevy.
Yeah, that's what I'd heard, yeah.
And these soldiers went in and went, "Are you Guy Fawkes?" He said, "Yeah, why? You're nicked, come on." And they nicked him. One thing Robert Cecil said to his men, do not take, because what they found out was the likes of Catesby, the leader of the plotters, and Thomas Percy, the nephew of the Duke of Northumberland, he said, "I want them dead. Don't take them alive. I want them dead," because they were held up at Hull Beach. Monteagle said they're up at Hull Beach. So he wanted them dead, and that was a great thing. They've already got some of these plotters in jail now, being tortured, putting on the rack, and, taking their confessions, Cecil, right, which we know is bogus now today.
Yeah.
You had the lads, the rest of the lads up in Hull Beach, and the two of them was Catesby and Thomas Percy. Remember what Catesby said? "I do not want them taken alive. I want them dead."
Yes.
And he shot them. He killed them. Why do you think he didn't want them alive?
Because there's no way, if they were from influential families,
Brilliant.
they may have someone to stand up with them and
Brilliant.
say, "Hang about it. He was down to party with me, or he's in the pub with me." So none of this is true. So they didn't want the opposition to their statements.
Exactly. And don't forget that Thomas Percy, his uncle, was the Duke of Northumberland, and he was very influential. So was Thomas Catesby. They were all very influential.
Yeah.
Now, here's something about the letter. When it was handed to the other fella, Catesby, not Catesby, Cecil, when it was handed to him. Now, here's what Lord Monteagle said. He said, "Listen," he said, "what about Sir Francis? After all, he's an in-law and I can't let anything happen to him." He said, "Don't worry, he'll be okay. We'll take him off the streets and we'll put him in a cell where he'll be safe from all this turmoil in case anyone wants to get him." And he said, "Well, no one's going to get him, are they? I won't. We'll just put him in a cell. Don't be worrying. He'll be all right." So Sir Francis Tresham was put in this cell. But he was getting all the privileges anyway. He wasn't like chained up and whatever. He was just in this cell where he was given food and whatever. Okay, and wine. He was doing all right. So just leave him there for a moment. So now what you have the roundup. You've got Catesby, Percy, dead. He was made up Cecil. And, a couple of others were killed and a couple of others were taken prisoner. Said that they were all tortured. And here's what happened. They were all found guilty, as you know. They were all found guilty. There was only one scribe in, right? And I just want to go back to this picture. One other scribe in, and little did Cecil know that this fella was in there. And you know who it was? William Shakespeare.
Wow.
William Shakespeare was a Catholic sympathizer because his mother was a Catholic. And he had to go against the grain, his own faith, so he could keep on writing. When he wrote about foreign things, like Hamlet, for example,
Yeah.
and Othello, they're all based outside the country. He always put little slants on it. Whereas in the likes of Hamlet, there is rotten in the state of Denmark. That's one of the saying, a very famous quote. There is rotten in the state of Denmark. After they find Hamlet's dad dead. There is rotten in the state of Denmark. Do you know what that was meant for? There is rotten in the state of England.
Yeah.
Okay? This is what he was writing. He's a brilliant writer. He was an absolutely brilliant writer. So now you have this fella, William Shakespeare, in the trial. In 1606, January 1606, right on trial. And where you have those, do you see them being pushed on boards? They're being pushed on boards by, dragged along on boards by horses. And they were all face down, going to their execution, where they were going to be hanged, drawn, and quartered. Hanged, drawn, and quartered. They were all face down. That shows you they're all face up. They weren't allowed to look out heavenwards. They were all face down. Those lads, all face down. On the way to the depths. And when they went up the scaffold, it was a very high ladders, and you had the hangman on the top. They put the noose around the neck and they dropped them, but then they cut the rope because they didn't want them to swing and die on the rope. So they dropped to the floor. Some of them broke their legs as they dropped. And then they were thrown on a butcher's table, a big butcher's table, where the proper butcher, started to chop the legs off and whatever, their arms. And the most frighteningest thing was, as they were lying there, they were forced to watch their body parts being burnt. And they used to cut from right up here, right down there, right up here, and they took out their innards and threw it on the fire while they're looking. They've got the faces over looking at the fire while their own body parts are burning. And that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. And, it's what you call a bonfire, a good fire, because what it's burning is Catholicism. It's Catholicism that they're burning, and every Catholic in the country. That's what it symbolizes. So that's what they're doing there. So you have this scribe, this great playwright. You have the playwright named William Shakespeare. And that year, he wrote Macbeth. Macbeth. And Macbeth, as you know, is tragedy speech. Now, that was written in 1606. At the very same time of the trial, and he wrote this play. And in the play, the tragedy speech of Macbeth goes like this, and I'll explain it. He's just been told that his wife had died. She threw herself off the battlements. And one of Macbeth's servants goes up to him and says, "My lord, the queen is dead." And here's what he says. And I'll explain it as when I finish it, I'll explain. He says, "She should have died hereafter. There would have been a time for such a word tomorrow, and tomorrow creeps in the petty pace from day to day, to the last syllable of recorded time. And all our yesterdays have lighted fools the way to dusty death. Out, out, brief candle. Life is but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage and is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing." That's the tragedy speech of him. Now, let's have a look at this. She should have died hereafter. He says the queen is dead. She should have died hereafter. Who's he referring to?
Queen Mary?
He's referring to Queen Elizabeth. She should have died hereafter. There would have been a time for such a word tomorrow, when tomorrow creeps in the petty pace from day to day. Because he found out about it. What I'm going to tell you in a moment. And where he says, "and all our yesterdays," meaning history, all our yesterdays have lighted fools the way to dusty death. What was the other fella holding? Guy Fawkes?
Yeah.
Torch. Have lighted fools the way to dusty death. They were put on a thing, weren't they? And the dust was blowing up into the faces because they couldn't look heavenwards. They weren't allowed to look heavenwards. So they were dragged along on a board, the dust blowing into the face. Have lighted fools the way to dusty death. Out, out, brief candle. That means your life is like the candle. Blows out and it's gone. Your life's over.
Snuffed.
Life is but a walking shadow. You know what the walking shadow is? The spy. Spies in the shadows. Do you see? Spies in the shadow. You come out of the shadows. If you see what I mean. Life is but a walking shadow. A poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage and is heard no more. Because, as I said before, you've got Cecil writing the transcript, whereas the witness, or the defendants are saying, "I wasn't there. I don't know why I'm here. I wasn't there. I wasn't one of them." A poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage and is heard no more, because he isn't. What he's saying hasn't been written down. It's only been written down by Cecil himself, who's telling a load of lies.
Yeah.
To benefit himself. To benefit himself. It is a tale. Now we know what a tale is. A tale is a story. So it's a story being told. Yeah. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury. This is Cecil. Get rid of these. Get rid of them. Full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. There you have it. There you have it. And what you've got is this, which is fascinating. It really is. You've got the likes of Shakespeare. He wrote Macbeth. And that's all that reference was towards Elizabeth and these plotters. And also Cecil, who was adamant, who hated Catholics. If he would have had his way, he would have committed genocide against every Catholic in the land. This is what he was like.
In our lifetime, I grew up in a Catholic church school. Never was this truth burdened on us. Always was the photocopied version of a Cecil history.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. Because as time goes on, you get all these. There's a book called, it's written by a lad named Christopher. I used to have it. I lent it out and never got it back. You know, I always forget who I lent things to. And I never ever got it back. And it's called The Bisley Boy. Just let me go and try and find it. It's very important. I'll just have a look. Let me living room. I won't be 1 minute up here. Sorry about this. 1 minute. Just hold on. I thought I had it. And I haven't got it, unfortunately. But I have got it somewhere. And it's amazing. But I'll have a look, see if I can get it for next week and show everyone it. And what it is, it's sorry about this. It's a thing about Elizabeth.
Yeah.
It's a thing about Elizabeth. And this was a broadsheet of this. I don't know whether it was the Daily Express or the Sunday Express. And it's the big cover, a big front page. And what it says was Elizabeth I a man?
Okay.
That's why she never married.
So, was that the secret that was found out?
Yeah. And it was found out by the Earl of Essex, and he said, I'm going to expose this. This is a sham. I'll expose Cecil as well.
Yeah.
Now, there's a book called The Bisley Boy by Christopher Hunt. The Bisley Boy. It's well worth the read. And it's all about the body of young Elizabeth being found.
Yeah.
Young Elizabeth. And they put a boy in his place because they wanted the pain in her place, because they wanted the line. They couldn't give up the line. They couldn't have Mary Queen of Scots having her there. See, there was a Queen's Dowager who looked after Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Henry didn't want to know her. And he used to just see her now and again, like visiting the grounds and waving to her from a distance. But a young Elizabeth apparently fell into a pond and drowned because they wore heavy, heavy stuff. The little girls in those days, all sequins and everything, very heavy dresses. And she fell in the ponds and drowned. The Queen's Dowager and her husband, they were terrified. They were terrified of being executed. So therefore, they dressed their boy, because he was more or less the same age, in their clothing. And so when Henry used to come, he made him wave, and that was it. That was the start of it. And the other fella, Walsingham, he found out. He had them executed just in case they'd say something along the lines. They just kept him as the boy, as Elizabeth. And her autopsy, there was no autopsy. When she died, they weren't allowed to do an autopsy. They actually broke her legs to put her in the coffin. 2 deputations went, one in 1984 to Margaret Thatcher, a deputation at the top historians, and they said, "Can we open the coffin of Elizabeth?" She said, "No, leave it. No. So okay, well, we'll go with a change of government. There's bound to be a change of government. So in 1997, they went up to see Tony Blair. He became the new Prime Minister. And he just said, just leave it. Just leave it. It could bring down the monarchy. Just let it rest. And that's what they wanted to do, open up the coffin. Because they actually said there's DNA now. Because Thatcher said, it could only be like dust now and nothing there. And with that, 97, they said to Blair, there's DNA, we can take samples. He said, just leave it. Just leave it. To find out whether she was really a woman or a man. So that's got a lot of things going on. How about that? So the Bisley Boy, read that, and you can come to your own conclusions.
Do you know what, Frank? That is absolutely fascinating tonight. Thank you for that. I didn't know next to nothing of what you were describing. And once again, I'm dumbfounded by the lack of education.
Yeah.
The lack of guidance in a Catholic regime.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's a lot, to go on. Now, every time I finished my lecture, right, about the Gunpowder plot, I used to say, "Is there any Catholics in here?" And loads of hands went up. Okay, I said, "Well, bonfire, that means good fire. And the good fire is the burning of all Catholics. Because when Guy Fawkes goes on the fire, that's the burning of all Catholics, all Catholicism."
Which in itself, it's a whole event based on mythology.
Oh, yeah.
What should we? Oh, your mind just whirls at the.
Well, it doesn't it? Because when you think about the fireworks going off That's the victory over the Catholics. It's just, and people celebrate it, you know. But you know, it's a tradition now. Bonfire night. It's been going on, and you know what? It wasn't going on from then. You know, 1606. It just stopped because, as Shakespeare says, you know, it's a tale told by an idiot, full of sounds and fury, signifying nothing.
Yeah.
Well, it didn't signify because it just carried on. You know, there was no bonfires, and the bonfires really started in the 1840s, and the burning of, it was the burning of books, and then the Pope as well, wasn't it? The Pope was thrown up.
So it always kind of sounded to me as a statement against of like establishment or power over foe. This is what it is. You cross us, and
absolutely. And when you've got the likes of, you know, as I said, the bonfire and the fireworks and everything else, you know, it's gone beyond like the burning of Catholicism. There was a great canto written by Sir Edmund Spenser. Now, Sir Edmund Spenser, he wrote about a woman named Britomart, which represented Queen Mary, and Red Cross that represented King George. Not King George, St. George. You know, the Red Cross, he was just Red Cross because he had the big Red Cross on his, you know, his thing. And when he slayed the dragon, what the protesters got it as, and what he said, it was the slaying, not of the dragon itself, the head of the dragon. It was the head of the Pope, and all the black thing that come out of the dragon wasn't red blood; it was black thing. Was the ink of Catholicism? You know, the books, you know, whatever that was written about Catholicism. So that was the slaying of Catholicism. And even Marx, you know, the Marxists, they got hold of it, and they had it as a symbolic gesture to the slaying of capitalism. So, you know, there's different varieties of the Fairy Queen, the canto by Sir Edmund Spenser.
It's like parallel histories go on, and we're going back to what we said the other week when we kind of raised a couple of eyebrows at the thought that Winston Churchill was the greatest ever Englishman.
Yeah.
And now we know why. You know, it's script written, isn't it? And sadly not by Mr. Shakespeare.
Yeah, and you know, this is what it's all about. The likes of Redbeard, which is a nice, you know, a nice comment. I wish my history was as good as Frank when I was at school. And Mark says, I wish Frank had been my history teacher at school, although I was in his history class a few years ago. That's lovely.
Yeah, me too.
And Redbeard says, off topic, but good news for us, Frank. Spurs lost. Digress. Wait till tomorrow. Mind blown, says Mark Simons.
Totally agree, Mark. Yeah, it was. Is.
And as Mark says, is anyone offer Frank doing a Ken Dodd and staying until 2 a.m. During this, we need to get our sleeping bags. Good night, all. Great show.
That's you know what? Imagine the education we'd have at the end of a week if we did 7 nights.
Don't think anybody could take flight for 7 nights. But anyway, Anthony, I've got to stop the show now. I can't just stop the thing, you know. Anyway, have you enjoyed it tonight?
I absolutely loved it, Frank. I have, and I feel I've been on a journey, and I'm sure everyone, the listeners and viewers, have been the same. And I'm sure everyone's filled with the same idea of tasting this up. But just a quick one-liner, then I'll shut up and get out the way. What in history? What happened to Cecil?
He just died. He just died. Nothing happened to him.
Live his life in splendor.
Yeah, he was just. He was a terrible man. He really was. He was a master spy, most powerful man on the planet. See what was happening with the churches and everything, and the land being taken away from the Catholic churches. Their land became property then of the likes of Cecil and his other cronies. And the more land, if you got hold of an estate that belonged to a Catholic, and they were getting fines and fines and fines until they had to sell up, they were buying the land. Lord Burleigh today owns the land of Catesby's, Catesby's ancestors. I mean, yeah. So there's no descendants that could have. I did a documentary about this particular thing. I was invited along, and I was with. It's been on the telly. This. I was with two aristocrats. One, a girl named Miranda, and this other fella. Both of them were descendants of. Well, Miranda was the descendant of Thomas Catesby, and this other aristocrat, I always forget his name, he was from Gloucester. He was the descendant of the very first fella to be arrested, which was Sir Everard Digby. He was hanged, drawn and quartered as well. They had all the documentation of what I've just said. They couldn't believe what I knew. They said, that's fantastic.
Wow.
That's fantastic. We've got this. We know. Thank you so much. Anyway, but that's not lovely. Brilliant as usual. I'm going to re-watch this because it's so interesting, says Redbird. Thank you so much.
Me too, Redbird. Yeah, me too.
Brian Max says, good night, Frank and Anthony. Great entertainment and historical brief. Learned a lot. Roll on tomorrow. God bless. Isn't that lovely? Redbird says, I love Kensalt. I'm definitely up for that. Mark Simon says, Frank Red Pill Carlyle. Anyway, Anthony, I'll tell you what I'm doing next week. I'm doing Jack the Ripper.
Brilliant. Absolutely.
Wait till you learn about this. You got to go.
Fantastic. Yeah.
It's good. It really is good. So I just want to thank anyway, besides the great man, Anthony, for keeping me company. I just want to thank the sponsors of the Frank Carlyle Show. Gap Painting Services. Gap Painting Services are brilliant. Christmas is right on us, right upon us. If you, how can I put this? If you want something done for Christmas, some decorating done, get hold of Gap Painting Services. Not only that, but if you're an NHS worker, you get a fantastic discount. And if you're an OAP and you need something done, get them in, because you too get a great discount from Gap Painting Services. Please get them. And you can always find them on the site. And Jason too, I don't know, he sent me, Jason sent me a message. And I wondered, I'm in bed, I suppose. Jerry Gilligan on the following 20th. Oh, brilliant. I've got another guest coming on the 20th, and you'll be made up with this fella. Yeah. Gerard Gilligan, his name is. And do you know what he is? He's an astronomer, all the way from Jodrell Bank. He's brilliant. And we'll have a lot to talk about. We'll have a load to talk about.
Brilliant.
So that's on the 20th. That'll be great. That'll be fabulous. And Redbird says, Frank's pills are blue, you know, the little one. Behave yourself, Redbird. Anyway, it's just for me to say thank you, people, for joining me tonight. If you're a big Liverpool fan, I'll see you all tomorrow night. I'll be doing one, not on Thursday because we're in that Europa League, so I'll be doing one on Friday. So it's tomorrow night, Tuesday, and Friday as well. So it'll be like a post-match, you know, on Friday, you know, what went on the night before in the Europa League. But anyway, next week, watch out for me and Anthony about Jack the Ripper. And I'll tell you who done it. I'll tell you. Because no one's got to answer anything what I said. Nobody. That's fantastic. And Mark Simons, James Maynard. It's a date, Frank. Okay, so I'll see you all tomorrow. You'll be tuning in tomorrow, won't you, Anthony, about the football?
I definitely will, Frank. Yeah. I'm keen to listen to what you and the panel have.
Well, you get all the lads here, you know, the likes of Redbird and that, they tune in, and you know, they pass comments as well. So I'll put the comments up and we talk about them. But I'm going to have a go at that Luton Town supply.
Oh, absolutely. I totally missed that. Even though I watched the match, I missed all that. And obviously you don't get any feedback from reporting on the TV or the radio. I'm keen to.
I'll have to spell it on tomorrow night. Raza Flowers, greetings and salutations to one and all. Behave yourself. You haven't been listening in at all. You've been watching the match, haven't you? But anyway, Anthony, thank you so much.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you. Really, really enjoyed being on. Thank you.
I'll see you in person with Jack the Ripper next week. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you out there. Thanks everything. Honestly, without you, there'd be no Frank Carlyle show. I hope you've enjoyed it. And I'll see you next Monday, the History Show and Jack the Ripper. Thank you so much. Ciao. Thank you, Anthony.